Gen 2, and then he finally actually did it.
Yeah, Gen 2 takes a little bit of effort to get it to work.
I told him the next thing he needs to do is install Gen 2 on our kerosene-powered cheese grater.
Well, don't laugh. You know, one of these days they might actually have it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, since it's time, I'm going to get started here. The streaming is on, and I'm just checking the audio of the streaming. That should be on as well, but the screen itself doesn't look right. So that means I have to reconfigure the screen capture properties so it captures from the right screen. Okay, capture cursor. Okay, and it doesn't look right to me. Okay, let's close this. Start streaming. There we go.
Oh shoot.
Alright, so now that the streaming is on, I'm just gonna say, hello Amanda, hope you're okay. Because she emailed me, that she would be missing today's class because she could not get out of the county because of the fire. But where she's located, she's safe and she has internet access. So the two most important things in life, being safe and internet access. Not necessarily in that order. Internet first. Yeah. So anyway, are there any questions about the homework assignment that was supposedly due on Sunday? Any real difficulties? Yep. Okay. So I want to hear about that. Okay.
Sunday, coming Sunday or the
No, the past Sunday, the Sunday that has passed already. So that would be the blog display and also the blog insert, that whole homework assignment. So are there, but any specific questions? Any specific questions about that one? Yep, go ahead.
Well, I can understand, but I want you to explain one more time.
Okay.
The SQL injection thing.
Uh-huh.
That how to not do that. So
How to
avoid
make sure it does not happen?
Does not happen.
You basically use the function called MySQL real escape string to wrap the strings before you
Could you
use
demonstrate
it.
that one more time?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, so don't touch any files that you're working on, because I'm going to use the timestamp of that particular files. But I can show you my solution to that homework assignment. Is that okay? So I will show you what it looks like first, and then we'll take a look at the source code. Yeah, I worked on that last night, and
But,
yeah,
Professor,
go ahead. Yep.
If we need to get into the admin PHP to work on.
Yes, I know.
And I've been working on my stuff already. I saved it yesterday. I was working on this homework on
Yes.
the thing. So if the timestamp shows that it's 12:11, is that
Just not from now on.
okay?
Do you plan on working it from here on? I mean.
Oh, I was trying to follow along what I have.
Okay.
what
Well,
I have
in that case, I
before.
won't show you the source code. I can show you what it looks like.
Okay.
So this is the admin page. So the admin page has got. So I got the sorting. If you look at the title, the author, created, and content. Content cannot be used for sorting. I did not, make it sortable by content. It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, that people would sort by content. But all the other ones can be sorted. And when you click on the plus, it will sort it in increasing order. If you click the minus, it will sort it in decreasing order. And the same thing for author, and also for created. Just like that. Is that okay?
So do we have to do it like that?
No, you do not. You just have to make it sortable. The homework assignment was not specific about what you need to make it sortable by. So if you make it sortable by one single column, if it's an option, I count it as good. Okay, so this is a little bit beyond what is asked for. Okay, so I can now insert additional things. So I can go to the title, and we can just add a new title. And let's see here, cisw410, and this is me. Okay, Thursday evenings are always exciting. Now, this is the part where it is kind of interesting because when I submit the query, it keeps the ordering. It doesn't change the ordering back to the default. It will keep the current way of ordering. And I think right now it's ordered by created in a decreasing order. Yep, okay. So we'll click submit query and it keeps this ordering. So I used 2 hidden fields to track how it is supposed to be ordered. So even though I'm submitting a form and those are hyperlinks that are outside of the form, but I use the same get variable names. So that's why it can preserve the way it is ordered. Yep, question?
Okay, I'm not exactly sure how to phrase this question, I'm gonna try my best.
Go ahead.
I didn't email you during the week or the weekend because I like to ask my questions in the way that they encourage you to do so on Stack Overflow, where I should know what my problem is as much as possible before I try to ask somebody a question so that they can better help me and I can better learn. But the whole weekend I really just couldn't figure why my program or why my script seems to stop at the if statement where I get the post data from the submit query button. And I put echoes and prints to make sure that it's getting certain data or to make sure that it's getting to certain parts of the script.
Okay.
And it basically stops after I get it to log into the database. Like I can get it to display the blog and log into the database, but I can't get it to add to the database. And I'm not honestly sure of an appropriate way to ask that question because I can't figure out what's wrong.
Okay, so that's a good question, and I think in general, I have seen a few people script, and I think the general problem is when it doesn't work, the script doesn't check that the query has failed and not print out why it has failed. Okay, that's the most common problem.
That sounds about right.
Okay, so I will show you an example. So I'm gonna go to my own folder. Yep, that's the one. Sign in. Okay, so I got testdb.php. This is basically what everybody should be doing, is to check whether the result of query is a value of false or not. Because if MySQL query is returning false, that means the query failed. And you might want to stop the entire program and just print out why it failed. Yep, go ahead.
What I attempted to do, the closest I could get to figuring out how to do that is making it so the if statement was an is set, and it checks if send data is set, and then what the thing is supposed to do when that condition is met is it run the script that's supposed to add to the database. But what I have it do first is I have it get the ID, and then I have it echo the ID to make sure I actually got the ID, and I think that that's where it stops.
Okay.
That was the closest thing I could think of to show that, to prove if it was getting data or not, and I proved that at the very least I proved that it wasn't.
Okay. So you have to, if it's not working, you have to confirm at which step it definitely is not working.
I confirmed exactly what line it's not working on at the very least.
Is it a query? Is it a MySQL call, or is it something else?
It's an if is set post send data.
Okay. So I have heard another person, saying that the post doesn't work the same way as get. Is that common? I mean, are you guys getting that experience?
I don't actually think so. I was
I don't think so
suspicious
either.
of it because my boyfriend accidentally put me under the assertion that that was true. Once I did a little bit of research, I told him that he was full of it.
Okay, well, I can take a look at the code during the lab time, and then we can try to figure out why it's not working.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, but this is generally speaking, what I would do is I would format the query first, but instead of printing the query, every single time, I would check the result of the MySQL query call and make sure that I catch the case that result is false. Because when result is false, that means the query did not go through. If the query does not go through, there's always an error message associated with it that can tell you why it is not going through. Can be a syntax issue, can be the field does not exist, or something along that line. But whatever that message is going to help you identify what is the problem, why is it not working. Okay, so in this case, I just print out a message here, which query has failed and why it failed. Okay, print out the error message. So let me run this script first, because the way it is right now is without any error. So without any error, it just prints out the table. Okay, we have seen this one before. So I'm going to go back in, and this time I intentionally mess it up. And I will mess it up in a very common way. Okay, so I will add where content ID equals to well, actually content ID doesn't work this way. Some people can search by author. So when you search by author and I just say tag here, that's going to fail. The reason why it is failing is because tag is supposed to be quoted. Otherwise, it will think tag is the name of another field. There's no such field called tag. What we are trying to compare author to is the string tag with single quotes. So this is one problem that I think some people encounter is they forgot to quote the value that should be used as a search criteria. Okay. So now if I run the script, it's going to fail, but it fails with at least a reasonable message. It says the query select star asterisk from main content where author equals tag failed, unknown column tag in where clause. But that to me is pretty useful, right? I mean, at least it points you to the where clause out of the entire thing, and it says, hey, why do we have a column called tag? Oh, okay, we forgot to quote it. Okay, so that's why in your scripts, maybe not in the current one that you have turned in, but in the ones that you're going to work on next, there will be more and more queries. So I would definitely put in a structure like this. After each and every MySQLi query, check to make sure that result is not false. If it is false, print out an error message and call it a day. Because any attempt to proceed after that point is not going to work. So is this part okay? Does everybody understand why it is important to do it? Okay, any questions about this script here? No? This is all good? Okay. I only got time to finish this one, but not the other one where you display the titles on the left hand side. You click on the title and it would display the content on the right hand side. Okay, I didn't have time to finish that one. So by the time I finished this one, it was already 11:30-ish, and it had been a long day. So I just go like, okay, I can't do this. So what I would do instead is I'm going to do it now. Okay. So when I do it now, the solution itself may be useful, okay, because you need to have those scripts to start off with for your next homework assignment. But what is more important, I think, is how I go about doing it, okay? Because I don't write the script from line 1 all the way down to the last line and then try to test and debug the whole thing. That doesn't work for me, okay? It might work for some of you, but it doesn't work for me. So what I usually do is I just do it step by step. All right, so this is exactly what I'm going to do next, is to work on the main display part of this one. And let me sign in first so I can locate the homework assignment, make sure that I meet all the requirements of the homework assignment. Oh, now I got 2 messages. I checked a little bit earlier, there was none, there was 0. And I'm going to check it here. It's possible that Amanda is sending me a message because she's actually watching the stream. There we go. Yep. There you go. No, the last message was just me. Huh. How come it shows up here? Okay, it's all right. go. We go to 10.5. No, that's the one for. No, that's the other one. We want to look at this one because I'm working on the last part of this one. Okay, so main display is the one part that I want to work on. The first quote-unquote 2 scripts is only one script, okay? Because both of those are inside the admin.php. It's just that the admin has to do the listing, show the table, and also allow people to create new entries. So main display is the one where you display all the titles of all the blogs on the left-hand side in reverse chronological order. And then when someone clicks on one of those things, then the right-hand side will display the content of that page. I'm just double checking to make sure that I'm not misunderstanding the homework assignment. So as far as I can tell, that is what is asked to be done here. The most recent entry should be the default starting content on the page. Okay. All right. So if I work on this script here, and I'll call this main display, main display.php. Okay. There we go. So the first thing I know is there might be some parameters that I need in this case. So what kind of parameters are we talking about? We don't need the sorting ones, right? But we do need to know which blog I should display by default, which is the most recent one. Is that making any sense? But I won't know which one is the most recent one until I have run the query to list all of those entries. So I know the first thing we need to do is to connect to the database and run a query. So I'm going to go back to my testdb.php. Oops, it wants me to save it first. And then we go to the testdb.php. What? I just saved it. Okay, one more time. New. Testdb.php. There we go. All right. So I'm going to copy a few lines from here. So that would be from line 2 to here, 2 to this line, yank, and over here just paste. All right. So this gives me, the basic stuff, so at least I know the database is connecting. It doesn't hurt to try it even at this point. In other words, the script doesn't do a single thing except to make a connection to the database, but it doesn't hurt to try it at this point. So I just say php main display.php, nothing comes out, and that's good. Okay, because if it doesn't connect, what should happen instead?
Give you an error.
It would give me an error because of the die statement. Okay, so it didn't give me a single message. That's good because it means that I have made the connection successful. So the next thing we need to do is to format a query. Now this is the other thing, is before I put this query into this PHP script, I want to test it by hand first, okay? Because it's much more convenient to test it by hand interactively than to put it into the script, figure out it doesn't work, change it, test again, because in the MySQL client, it is much more interactive. I can just up arrow, change a few things, test it again. So I would use MySQL, my name, -p, and it is, there we go. So the first thing I do is, I just do a star from main content. Okay. Cool, okay, just as expected. But I do want all of these items to be printed in a reversed chronological order. Now it is true that if you just reverse the content ID and use it for sorting, it works too. But I will use the created field because that's the actual field for time. So I'm gonna say the same thing, but this time I say order by created in a descending order. I don't want an ascending order. Ascending order would put the oldest item first. I want the newest item first, and that's why it has to be descending. So put the semicolon here, and we want to double check that this is actually in the descending order. It is in fact in descending order. I mean, Lieutenant Data put in an entry in the future. Is that okay? So it kind of stood out because it's not even 2018 yet, and yet we have an entry in 2018. But it does work. So that means this order seems to work. Now, but this one, because of the star here, it is selecting every single field that I need. I don't really need all of them. What do I really need in this case?
You need content.
I need title for sure,
Title, you're
right? All right, so we need title for sure. Title. What else do we need? The author is kind of optional. If you want to be nice and show who. The homework assignment did not call for that, but if you do that, that's okay too.
So contents. Contents.
Why do you want to use content here?
Because while you're going through this thing or when you will display,
Okay.
you need the most recent content.
Right. So you can do it this way, but it's not efficient. Okay, and I'll tell you why it is not efficient. If I do it like this, okay, if I say select title, content, it's going to show the two columns that yes, we need the content of the most recent one, right?
Right.
But the database is going to send the content of all of the other blocks to the buffer anyway. So even though you're not utilizing the content of all of the other blocks, it is still transmitted between the MySQL server and the server running your PHP script. With this kind of data, it's no concern at all. But on the other hand, if you're running an actual database and the stuff that you want to display can be big, this can be wasting a lot of bandwidth. Okay, so that's why I'm not going to do that. Okay, I will just do title, but I do need one more field. I need one more field so that when I create the hyperlinks, the anchors will tell me, oh, when this anchor is clicked, we need to find that block.
Content ID.
Content ID, exactly. Okay, content ID is the right one. Some people use title, and search by title, but that means if you have two duplicate titles, then you might have a problem because it will only find one. It will find both, but you will only display one. That's the problem. But content ID is guaranteed to be unique. Why is that the case? Why do you think content ID is guaranteed unique? Title is not. Sorry?
Primary key.
It's a primary key. Okay, very good. So it's a primary key, and that guarantees that it is unique. So that's why these two columns are the ones that I need. Okay? A whole lot of stuff is transmitted. It's just the title, tend to be pretty short, and the content ID is just an integer, so that's pretty short as well. Are we doing okay so far with this? Now, because of the way I toy with the database, we can see that they're not really in order. In other words, in other words, created does not always correlate with content ID because of the way I mess around with the database. All right, cool. So I'm just going to look at this script here. Okay, if you have a little tool like I'm not going to show you here, but I have a little Post-it application, where I can just put something onto an electronic Post-it. It's just a little notepad. It doesn't really do anything significant. It's just a place to park some text that I'll be using later. You could do it that way. Or you could just keep this window open and then use another window to do all the editing. It's entirely up to you how you want to do this part. So I'm just going to open up another tab here and use this tab to do the editing. So this way, if I need to, I can go back to the MySQL session and do some more experimentation. So I'm going to do it that way. And by the way, how many PuTTY sessions can you open to the server? As many as you want. I'm pretty sure the system has a resource limitation, but I think you'll run out of screen space first. So I'm not too concerned about on the server side, you might run out of memory, because you won't have that much screen space to open up that many terminals. All right, so here go to public cisw410, and the script is called main display. There we go. So I'm gonna put the query over here. So query equals to, and I usually use double quote. Occasionally I might use a single quote, and then I switch back here. I just select and copy the portion that I need. Okay, so we say copy, and then we switch back to here, and then we just paste. There we go. That is cool. Okay. In other words, when you need to experiment to make sure that the query is correct, use the interactive client, because that allows you to quickly change and experiment with your query until you get the right one. Okay. All right. So now we go back to that whole thing. Query result. I don't like to use just the word result because it can be the result of many things, but query result is a little bit more specific. And I will show you this syntax here, which is a shorthand, but it is very handy. I don't know why the indentation is off a little bit. There we go. Okay. So this syntax is, you have seen it already. When you see dollar row equals to MySQL underscore fetch underscore row blah blah blah, it's the same thing. Okay, it's the same meaning. So when you look at this particular line, let me give it a line number. When you look at line 13, the first thing it's going to do is to perform the MySQL underscore query. That's going to be called first. In other words, it will attempt to run the query on the database. When it's done, it will take whatever return value the query call is having and store that into query result. That's the second thing that it's going to do. Whatever you store in query result, it can be false if the query failed, or it can be some kind of object when the query is successful. It is going to be used as a condition, because the whole thing is inside the parentheses of the condition of a conditional statement. Okay, and when used in that context, anything other than 0, false, null, not defined are considered true. Okay, so by doing it like this, the then branch is basically saying, okay, the query was successful. Now do something about the successful query. The else branch, on the other hand, is saying the query was not successful. Query failed. And when the query failed, just die. Okay? But before we die, we want to say the query failed, and then the message that the system came back to give us is MySQL error link. So this way, if by any chance I malformed the select query and it failed, it would just stop right here with a message telling me why it failed. So I really encourage the whole class to, every single time you have to run MySQL query, do it this way. Check the result to make sure that it is okay. If it's not okay, print a message so that you know why it is not okay, so you have some clue as to how to fix it. Continuing. Okay, if the query was successful, now this part is kind of questionable. If you ask a computer scientist, the computer scientist will say, don't write any code here. Write code inside a then branch of the conditional statement. Okay? But if you ask someone who is not a computer science person, but is much more pragmatic, the pragmatic person will say, continue to write the program on line 22. What is the difference? Or is there any difference?
Not exactly, because if your program fails, you die anyway, right?
Yes.
So you're not going to execute what is below. And if it is successful, you're not going to go to the die branch, and you will come out of the if statement and would be at line 22.
Yes. So functionally speaking, it does not matter. Okay? Functionally speaking, you continue to write your program on line 15 between the curly braces, that's fine. If you continue to write your program on line 22, it is the same. Okay? What is different is if you continue to write your program on line 15 and continue to use that approach, then you will have nested levels of curly braces really fast. So it will stack up the levels, like 5, 6, 7 levels. If you use line 22 and just continue your code that way, then it won't stack up, the nesting won't stack up. Okay? So this is a programming style issue. You guys can free to choose whichever way you think suits you better. So I'm just going to pretend that I'm a pragmatic person, who I'm not. But I'll just pretend that I am and continue the code on line 22. So on line 22, once again, you might want to just kind of repeat the comment over here just to make sure that you understand that if you ever get here, that query was successful. Okay. So the first thing we need to do is to generate the catalog of titles, block titles on the left-hand side. Okay, which also means we probably want to open up a table, open up a row, open up a cell before we get to that. Okay, so I'm going to teach you one little technique here that will allow you to generate content of a page out of order and still be able to create a web page by rearranging all those things later on. Yep.
I had a question about the close. If you were to be using closes, would you use it after the query, like in that spot where you have the no?
If you were to close, you would do it here.
Anything else?
Yep. Because the other one is not timed to close yet. Because I might have some additional queries to make later on.
Is that going to be the only one you use in the whole?
Nope. This is one of the places, because there's no after die, no additional code will execute in the script. So if you intend to close the connection to the database, this is your last chance. Line 19 is your last chance to close that connection if the query failed. On the other hand, if the query did not fail, I cannot close the link yet because I need to rely on the same connection for something that I need later on.
So if you use close, you would actually have to use connect.
You have to reconnect later on if you need to connect to the database again. So most programs would only open once and close, if they will only close once at the very end of the program. Because when you look at the duration of the execution of a script like this, it's measured in, at the most, tens of milliseconds. So the cost of opening a connection and then closing it and then reopening it and closing it again, that cost is easily more than 20-something milliseconds. So it's not worth the time to close it and then reopen it. And an opened connection doesn't really use up a whole lot of resources, especially when the duration is only about 20-something milliseconds. It's no big deal at all. On the other hand, if you have a script that is user interactive, and you're not going to close the connection for hours, then you might have a problem. Because now if you have, let's say, 200 people in the company, and they're all using the same program, and they're all interacting, and nobody's closing the connection, then you will have hundreds of simultaneous connections with the database at any particular time, and that can cause issues. But scripts are not like that, because every single time the script executes, it's like, zip, done. So it's not going to be, you won't have sustained, connection in this case. That okay?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. But that's a really good question. All right, so if the query was successful, so remember this is a trick. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use a variable to store what should be displayed on the left-hand side. Okay. So I would call this titles. Okay. Now, if titles is too close to titles, and you don't like this name, you can say title list. Okay. So we'll start with an empty string, and then what we'll do next is we'll just say while row equals to MySQL underscore. Now, when you do the fetch, you have two options. You can do a fetch row, which is what I have been using, or you can use fetch assoc, ASSOC, fetch associative array. The only difference is, one, you use numbers to index into the individual items. The other one, you have to use the field names to index into the individual items. With a query simple like this, it doesn't really make that much of a difference, okay? Because we know that in this particular query, okay, it's rolled out on the screen already, we know index 0 is the title, we know index 1 is the content ID, so it's not a big deal. When you have queries that has a lot of fields, then you may not remember the ordering very clear, but you know the names of the fields. So in those cases, when your query gets complicated and you have many, many fields returned in a single row, then assoc, the associative array is making more sense. But with this one, either one works. Okay. So I'm just going to use row in this case, and you have to pass a query result as a parameter. Okay. So this basically is saying for each row, okay, for each row, do the following. And instead of printing, this is what I'm doing. Title list is title list. I'll give you a shortcut later on. Concatenate with, in parentheses. It depends on how fancy you want this thing to be. I just want an anchor with a line break. Okay, if you want to turn it into a list, go ahead. If you want to turn it into like its own table that is stacked, vertically, that's okay as well. But I just want the minimalist approach, so we have a hyperlink, okay? And with any hyperlink, you have href, and the href is supposed to be double quoted, so I'm going to finish the double quote first. We'll fill in the stuff later on. And then between the open and the close tag of the anchor, we just want title. And title itself is row bracket 0 in this case. Close this, and we probably want to do a BR, okay, because otherwise they will all appear on the same line, which doesn't look good. And that's it. Okay. Do we have any questions about this line at this point, other than, well, we did backfill what is between the double quotes? Are there any questions? Yeah.
PHP doesn't support dot equals, or
it does. That's why I'll show you the shortcut later on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I do want to give people this kind of more intuitive code first, and then we'll do the shorthand.
kind of beside the point.
Yep. But remind me if I forget. Okay. But are there any questions about that line 27? No questions? Going once? Going twice? Okay, no questions? So now it is time to fill in this part here. Okay, which script are we talking about, and what are the parameters that we need to specify with this particular anchor? Okay, so this is where things can be a little bit fun. So I'm gonna break it apart, okay, first. So every time I break the string apart, I'm going to use the double quote, because the double quote is used in PHP to start this string to begin with. So I need to use the double quote. So I have double quotes to end the first part, double quote to start the second half, and a dot to concatenate the two. But now I can concatenate with other things as well. So I'm going to have another concatenation. And if you have read my notes for this week, I typed up some new notes for this week. This is a really cool technique, and I'll explain what it is. Underscore file is the file name of this script itself, but it's a full path. In other words, it is the full path name to this particular file, including all the slashes, all the folder names, and whatnot. I don't need all that, okay? So base name is taking that and say, oh, forget about the path. I'm just getting the file name and the file extension. Is that okay? So doing it this way is really cool, because now you don't have to remember the actual name of the script anymore. This technique will work in main display.php, it will work in admin.php, It will work in any PHP script. Is that okay? It's a really, really useful technique because this way you don't have to actually spell out the name of the script itself, and it always works. So are we cool so far? Okay. So this is one technique that I talked about in my notes. Okay. What else do we need to specify here? Well, maybe we need to specify one single parameter, which has to do with, hey, when this hyperlink is clicked, we need to retrieve the content of that particular block. So that would be the content ID of this particular entry. So we know that, dollar, I forgot to insert first. So we know that we need a question mark to begin the parameter. We also know we need to now give it a name. So this variable has not been defined yet. So string ID has not been defined. I'll define it later. Equals to $row bracket 0 close bracket. Oh, I take it back. It's $1 bracket 1 because bracket 1 refers to the actual content ID of this particular row. Is that okay so far?
Row 0 is content ID, row 1 would be title.
Row 0 is title, row 1 is content ID because of the way we created the select statement to begin with.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
so it has to do with the way I did it earlier. Okay, so we'll go fix a few things because we also need the global variable now. Str ID equals to, you can name this anything you want. I mean, it doesn't have to be content ID, just ID is fine. Sorry? Oh.
Sorry.
I thought you were talking to me. All right, so now we got this little thing going, and this is kind of verbose because when you say title list equals to title list dot something, it's a little bit verbose. So I'll give you an alternative form of the same thing that reads that's a lot easier to read. It's dot equal to. So when you use dot equals to, it simply means append whatever is on the right hand side of dot equal to the variable. So it's just appending. It makes it longer, and you don't have to refer to the name of the variable again on the right-hand side of the equal. Question?
No.
No? Okay. Are there any questions at this point? Questions about line 28 versus line 29? Line 29 is the shorthand of line 28. If you're not sure and you just say, okay, I want to stick with what I know for sure, stick with line 28. If you say, I want to save a few keystrokes when I'm typing the program, you can go for line 29. But they mean exactly the same thing. Are we doing okay so far? Yep.
What did you make string ID at the beginning?
I just defined it all the way at the beginning. So I made it on line 5. I just did it.
Okay, that's our own defined ID. That's going to be.
Has nothing to do with the name of the field.
Yeah.
This becomes a get parameter. The name of the get parameter is ID.
Okay.
If you want to use content ID, that's cool too. But since there's no other things, it's the ID of. It has to be the content ID of the block. So that's why I just chose ID.
Okay.
Yep. On the other hand, if authors have IDs too, then I would use content ID versus author ID versus other IDs. Okay. Are we still doing okay so far with this program? You know what? I'm going to stop here, and I would just do a little print at the very end. I say print title list. And if I'm going to print it, one thing that I might want to do is to put a new line at the very end here, just so that it shows, correct. Because otherwise it's one huge long line and it might be difficult to parse. So this is my entire program with a semicolon at the end, and we'll check it out. All right, does it look right to you? So we got the anchor, href equals to main display.php. See how that magic works? It knows its own name, okay? question mark ID equals 4, and INTP's journal, which is the text that displays inside the anchor itself, close anchor, line break, and then the second one, it's a duplication. Oh, okay, that's a duplication because I got both line 28 and line 29, remember? Those two lines are supposed to do the same thing, and they did. I guess, it proves that these two lines do exactly the same thing, but we only need one of them, so I'm going to comment out the other one. Do you guys see why I got doubles? Yep, okay. So that was a silly bug, but are we doing okay so far with this? Yep.
Your script is coming back to the same file that you're on. So why do you need to define a traffic equal to file name?
Say that one more time.
Okay, so we're coming back to the same file that we are on,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So why do we need to give it a file name? We just do double quote or single quote? and then
Okay, I have
question
heard that
mark.
different browsers work differently.
Okay,
Some browsers will do it, some browsers may not do it. So you cannot not give it a name. Href must have a name.
okay.
That's what I have read. Okay, not necessarily
Because of the
it is
virtual
true.
for me, so
Which browser are you using? Chrome, Firefox?
I use alternatively Chrome and Firefox.
Okay. I looked it up, to see whether the name is actually needed, and there were browsers that do not work that well when the name is not provided as a part of the link. So that's why I always put in the name.
Okay, nice. Thank you.
But that's interesting. I don't know for sure whether it will work on all browsers or not.
Okay.
Yep. All right. So do we have any questions at this point? But the key is, I don't really have a single print except for this one. It's only for testing. So this allows me the flexibility to generate the content, store it in a string, and then do all the other formatting. And when it's time, I pull that string and say, hey, this really needs to go here. So the parsing or the processing of the parameters now does not have to coincide, or it's no longer limited by these two things are now, the ordering can change. The generation of the content as opposed to the processing of the get variables can now be the order can now be alternating or in any fashion you want. Mason doesn't like that approach.
It's beautiful.
Oh.
It's just very, very good, very powerful, and great language. It's just a valuable tool I use.
It's a trick, it's just a technique to generate content. It gives you the flexibility. All right, so we have title list now, so we can just kind of comment out this one because we just know that the title list is good to go, right? So the next thing we need to know is which content should we display? So to do that, okay, so I'm going to open a section here, determine which blog content to display. So with this one, you have to start with this. And I'm going to use the same approach like I do with all of the other scripts, which is basically to use a variable to store the ID. So this way, if I have a typo, the PHP engine will catch it. I don't have to worry about, did I type it right every single time? Nope. If I mistype, it will spot it. Okay, so with an if, there's always an else, right? So we'll put an else here. All right, so with the else, I'm just going to say ID val, the value of the ID, is the first entry. Okay, but who's the first entry? Well, we don't know who's the first entry at this point because we have just run the fetch row thing, and it's already done. Yeah, my ring.
That was me.
Oh, you have the same thing? You have a
Yeah.
ring? Okay. I'm going to silence mine so it doesn't disturb the class. Okay. All right. Silenced. All right, so this one, I don't really quite know. Okay, so we'll just put a semicolon here. So you got two choices here. You have one choice of running the query again, but only limit to only the first row, to return the first row, or you can remember when we went through that list the first time. Okay, so it's up to you. If you want to run another query, that's okay, but that's costly. If you remember from earlier and change that code, that is less costly by comparison. So I'm going to use that approach. Okay. So with that approach, what I really need to do here is to say ID val starts off with some unreasonable value. Okay. We know the ID cannot be negative, so I'm going to use -1 as the initialized value to mean that it is not valid, it is wrong. Okay. And then inside the code, the first thing I do, well, inside one iteration, one of the things that I do is I would say if ID val is less than 0, which means it is a unreasonable value, I'll just initialize it here. ID val equals to $row1, which means this line of code, line 33, will only be triggered exactly once, because the IDs start from 0, right? So once this gets an actual ID, it will never execute again, which also means it will only get the ID of the first row of this particular query. Is that what I want as a default? It is.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, so that's the trick to do this. Okay. Then later on, so this means I don't need this part anymore. The else really has nothing to process. On the other hand, if the get parameter ID has something, that means somebody clicked it. Somebody clicked a hyperlink or an anchor to trigger the execution of this script. So I'm going to overwrite it. But before I overwrite it, I better make sure that the range is correct. And there is an item corresponding to that particular ID. Is that making any sense? Okay. So there is an ID get param. We need to make sure it is okay. All right. So how do we know it is okay or not? I can do a range value check, right? I can check make sure it's not negative. I can compare to the maximum value of all the IDs, but that's not sufficient because people can delete individual entries of the block. They can leave holes within the range, and those holes are invalid. Okay? So the best way to check this is really to run another query. So I'm going to run another query here, and this particular query looks like this: select count content ID. So this is something that's new. I'm not sure whether Carol's note actually talk about this one, but this is a really, really useful technique. From main content, and then you have to specify where. Okay. So over here we'll say ID val equals to $that. That content ID equals to. Now this is where you're not supposed to do this. Okay, that would not be good because of security issues, potential security issues. Because if someone is trying to hack into your website, that person can specify the ID parameter to include quotes and other things to basically extend the query that you already have here. So that would be a bad thing to have. So we don't want to do it that way. If we are not going to do it this way, it also lacks the double quotes, the single quotes around the value that you need to look for. But this is supposed to be an integer, so it should be okay. So what we'll do is we're going to stop this string, do a dot for concatenation, then we call SQL MySQLi underscore real underscore escape string, and then you have to use link as the first parameter. Close this, and we'll concatenate a single quote after that to end the quote of the ID that you're comparing to. Yep.
I just wanted to let you know that I have to leave class early because my family just messaged me, and I just didn't want to leave without saying anything. I'll
Okay.
ask you for help on email.
Okay, that's okay. Well, thank you for letting me know first.
Yeah, no problem.
That's very
Thanks for
polite.
being
That's
cool
good.
with it.
Okay, so do we have any questions about this line, line 44? Hmm? That means you're escaping the string so that single quotes will not be expanded as a single quote. It will be expanded as a / single quote. It basically it helps to prevent SQL injection hacking. People cannot do SQL injection hacking because you have escaped all the funny looking characters like quotes. They are all escaped. You're not accidentally extending your script using this method.
We need to escape all our variables in a normal situation.
Anything that is from a get variable, you should escape. You should assume everything from get and everything from post is suspect.
Okay.
Because a hacker can easily create a query, craft a query to try to get into the website. So every get, every post needs to be, you have to validate and say that, okay, it is a potential problem, it's a potential threat. How do I make sure it is not a potential threat anymore? This is one way to do it. I know it's a security issue, it is not a beginning programming issue, but when people don't learn it, don't get exposed to it in a beginning class, they will keep doing it without using the escape string approach, and that becomes a problem later on. Because when you're working on a real commercial website and not this blog editing homework assignment, not having this can have serious consequences. Yep, sir.
Okay, so in the parentheses, you have $sign link, comma, $sign ID val.
Right. So ID val is a string that we are getting out of the get parameter,
Okay.
which is a part of the URL. Link is really just the connection itself, the quote unquote the connection. But you need to supply the link here because the call is requiring that.
Okay. So if you were to do that instead of there, if you were to put it up in line 43 and do that.
You could do it that way too. You can just you can wrap it around in line 43. That would work as well.
Okay, so then how would you would use that, the link, and then the get?
Right. So if you try to do it on this line, you could do it this way. You can just basically say MySQL will escape string, whoops, and then link that. You can do it this way.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. In the parentheses, you still use the link and then use the get string
Right.
instead of just the ID.
Yep. Yep. So it's one way or another. You have to escape it first. So I just decide to escape it when I need to escape it, and otherwise I keep it the same way as it is. But it's up to you to decide which way you want to do it. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to the way that I did it. Question?
So you have to escape it, you have to make sure it's not null, like if you have a variable.
Right. You have to make sure it is set first, because if it's not set, then you don't even have anything to process.
Yeah, it'd be good to just write a general function to handle all those cases for you, and that way you can just run that function for every variable, and then
Yep, you could do
have
that.
it all solved.
Yep, you could do that. Quote, there we go. Okay. So I just got the program back to where it was. Okay. Yep.
What
okay.
is this concatenated string after the ID val? What does that
That's just a quote, I'm missing a quote here. Now, if you know that ID is an integer, that is not needed. Okay. Now, let's double check, right? Because we already have this over here. So we can now say, select count content ID from main table, main content where content ID equals to let's pick 6. Okay, that should return a value of 1. That's cool, right? So we want to see if 6 can be quoted, and it will still return the right value. Oops. That won't work for sure. Oh, it still says 1. Interesting. Very interesting. So the 6 semicolon doesn't really do anything to it. That is weird. Just to make sure this is working, let's try 66. That should return 0. There we go. Yep, question? So count is really useful because it really is just asking the database itself, is asking the database server to say, hey, you do the counting. But why do we want the database server to do all the counting instead of having the PHP script to do the counting by calling mysqli num rows? Because that's also counting the number of rows that are returned. So why don't we do it that way? What is the trade-off? What is the trade-off between having the PHP code to do the counting as opposed to having the database server to do the counting?
Well, because you don't want to have people access to the database server.
Well, you already have that.
Right?
You already have that. So the difference is when the database server is doing the counting, it is far more efficient. Okay? What programming language do you think they use to program MySQL or Oracle or PostgreSQL and so on? C, C++, something that's really efficient, something that's compiled, right? Is PHP a compiled programming language? Now, this is a slightly more advanced topic, but it is important in this discussion. PHP is not a compiled programming language. It is a scripting language. So that means anything that you run in PHP, the same logic, the same code, is going to be easily 10 times slower than the C version. Now, this is not even counting the fact that if you do all the counting on the PHP side, the database will still have to send back all the rows. Okay, with the content of the rows, it has to send everything back. So the transmission time itself is also part of the inefficiency. On the other hand, if you have the database server itself to do all the counting, it's all internal. It's all done by C code, super duper efficient. And all it transmits over from the database server back to your PHP script is a number like that. Super efficient. Yep.
I want to make sure I understand the count content ID.
Mhm.
Wouldn't that always return 1 since there's a unique content ID?
Yes.
Okay.
But if you select to count something that is not unique, then you can get something other than 0 or 1. But in this case, we just want to make sure it's not 0.
Okay.
Because if it is 0, that means, hey, the ID that somebody entered is incorrect. Maybe someone's trying to hack into the site. By trying out different IDs, they try to pull things from the database that your script is not supposed to pull.
Okay.
So we want to make sure that it is valid before we do anything else. Now you can also just pull the content directly. So you can say content, count content ID. So this way it will return both the content, which you will need later on, as well as the content, the count, so that you can get both at the same time. So that's what we'll do. Okay, we'll try this here. Okay, oops, content. There we go. So in this case, content is null because there's nothing matching content ID 66. On the other hand, if I change 66 back to 6, then it will specify Thursday evenings are always exciting as the content, and then the count is 1. So depending on whether you just need to know whether it is corresponding to at least an entry in the database or whether you actually need the content, you can choose to do it either way. Is that okay so far?
It's okay, one question though.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so we got our first list just like a fraction of a second ago. All the rows,
Right.
row
Mhm.
IDs, right?
Right.
So now, why do we need to recheck that it exists? Because we just did it
Yes.
within the same link, so
Yep.
unless too many users are doing it and the system doesn't have some kind of security.
Okay, that's a good question. So the question is valid, and we have a way to utilize, to optimize the design. Okay, so the question is, since we just ran a query of all the rows, this is the query that we ran earlier, which definitely includes the title and also the content ID. Why don't we just grab the content also from this query? Is that the question?
That, or even when we go and fetch that record again,
Mm-hmm.
we should know that, yeah, this content ID exists. So we know we do not need to check.
Not necessarily. Okay, so with this one, I do agree that this can be optimized. In other words, instead of just doing the count, what we can do is just say, hey, give me the content of this particular thing. That would work.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But you still would make sure that it exists for that ID.
Yeah, this will check both. It will check both whether it exists or not, and also whether. Now, but you might need to run it one more time. Okay, I'll give you the reason why.
Okay.
If a hacker or somebody who has hyperlinked or bookmarked a particular block entry, so when you bookmark something that has get parameters, the get parameters become a part of the bookmark, which is really cool because now when you go to that particular bookmark, it go to a specific block entry. Okay, but if the entry is deleted later on, then you cannot retrieve it anymore, right? So this attempt will return. It'll be okay. The query will succeed, but you will end up with no row as the result. Is that okay? So what do? You're still supposed to display the default content is still supposed to be the first entry, the most recent entry. So you still have to query it one more time to get the most recent entry to display. Is that okay? So you still need potentially one more query to get this code to work. But this will save you one.
Okay.
It will save it most of the time it will save you one, but potentially you still have two queries. I'm not sure whether I'm making sense or not, explaining it well enough or not. Okay. Maybe not. All right. Okay, so because of that fact, I'm gonna switch back to the original thing, which is just counting content ID from here. Okay, and then we'll do the same thing, which is query result equals to MySQL query link query. And we'll do the same thing here. In the else, we say die query failed, and the error message is MySQL underscore error link. Okay. If we do get a valid result, we want to check what it is. It's either 0 or not 0. We just have to make sure it is non-zero. So we'll go get that particular row. Okay, so we say row equals to MySQL fetch row query result. And here we can now check if row bracket 0, we only have one field in this particular select statement, so it has to be the one with index 0 that we need to check. So if that is greater than 0, everything is good. Otherwise, we have a problem. Is that okay?
Sure.
So if it's okay, we're not going to do a single thing. If it is not, then we have to grab whatever the first thing is listed, which also means we really should not be doing this. We should not be overwriting ID val up here. Is that okay? We should not be using the same variable. So this one, everything that we do here should be using get ID val, because this is the ID val from the get parameter. So we'll change all of these to get ID val. And if row 0 is greater than 0, that means it does exist. This is the time when we can say ID val equals to get ID val, because whatever is passed as a get ID, as a get variable, is valid. Now we can actually use it. If not, we'll just keep the original. Is that okay? I'm going to add some comments here just so that we know what it is. So we'll go ahead and say, okay, ID passed in URL. And here we want to check to see if this ID exists in the table. And over here, we basically verified ID, make the get ID the ID to use, otherwise the get ID is invalid. Keep the default ID. Okay, is that helping to kind of clarify what branches is doing what in this code? Be okay? Yeah. All right. So after all this code, okay, by the time we, okay, see, this is the problem with a conditional statement that is spanning more than a page. I lost track of all of those curly braces. Now the editor that I use, does allow me to go to the beginning of the matching thing, which is great. Okay, but not everybody has a tool like this. So at this point, we know one thing for sure: ID val is valid. It has to be. Well, that is not always the case. Okay, there's one situation where ID val can still be -1 at this point. What is that situation?
No records.
Exactly, the table is empty. So you have to think about, if the table is empty, what are you going to do? Well, no title to display, no content to display either. So you kind of have to think about it that way and go like, oh, okay, so if the ID val is -1 at this point, it means the entire table has nothing in it. Is that okay? So now it's time to specify what should display on the right-hand side. So now you have to say, if ID val is less than 0, then you want to handle the case where the no blog to display. So the actual blog, I keep mistyping this, blog content is, you can keep it empty, but I would generate a message. I would just say that there's no block entry in the whole table. Okay, so I would just use a H3 for instance, and say no blog entry to display. Oops. There you go. Okay. On the other hand, if somebody is smoking outside.
Oh yeah.
Right. But I cannot see that person.
Smoke is not
I can smell the smoke, but I don't see anyone smoking outside. You guys can smell the smoke too, right?
Yeah. I hit you first, but I got it.
Huh?
It stinks.
But where is that person? Who's the
I don't
smoker?
know.
You know what? I'm guessing that person may be in the bathroom. Okay. All right. So in this case, ID val is greater than or equal to 0. We need to retrieve log content from the database. Is that okay so far? All right. So to do that, we have query equals to select. This time I just need content. I don't need anything else. From main content, where content ID equals to. The quotes are optional. You don't really need the quotes here. ID val is what we need to substitute in here. How come I'm not surrounding this one with escape string?
Is it integer?
Because it's already valid, right? At this point, it is already valid. It is an integer, so we are okay with it. Okay. The only thing about the time when you need to surround it with MySQL real escape string is when you're dealing with directly with a get or post parameter that has not been validated. Then you need to kind of wrap it around. Okay, so this is my query.
I wanted to
Yeah.
add and greater than 0,
Mhm.
because if
It can be 0.
If you had like a 0 entry, or if you had you don't want to return values like so if it's an integer, I just have a habit saying content ID equals this and greater than 0. If it's an integer to
Okay, where on which line?
because if it's a blank value, the default would be 0. So if you had
No, there's no default value.
Well, because it's a primary variable. I just have a general habit if it's an integer that will include and greater than 0.
But it can be 0.
Well, just to make sure if there were rows that had, if it wasn't a primary key and you did define it as an integer and it was no one and it left it blank, the default value would be 0. So you always want to make sure you don't accidentally retrieve a row that has a 0 value if it's expressly defined as an integer in your database. So if I had that variable as an integer and I was searching for it, I would always include and greater than 0. Just says that.
But the ID can be 0. I mean, 0 is a valid ID in the table.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so we'll go ahead and execute it. So it's the same thing, if query result. You can see how this appears several times in this code. It's probably a good idea to turn it into a subroutine. So, but we'll do that later. Remember, refinement later. Get it to work, and then we'll refine it. So query. Close. Okay, the else always correspond to dying. So you always say query failed. And then you specify the reason why it failed, which is MySQL underscore error with link as a parameter. If it did not, return something that's false, that means we are expecting to get something out of this. Okay, so now at this point, we know it has to be valid, because if the entry does not exist corresponding to ID val as a content ID, we wouldn't be here. Okay, but it still doesn't hurt to double check. Okay, so I'm going to show you what I mean by it doesn't hurt to double check. So we say if row equals to MySQL fetch row dollar query result, if else die. Okay, but this die is going to be very special. Okay, mysteriously failed. Because there's no reason why it should fail at this point. Okay, as far as I can tell, there's no reason why it should fail at this point, but I am checking it anyway. It doesn't cost you a whole lot of code. more execution time to check it again here. But if it does die unexpectedly, for some really strange reason, at least you catch it. Instead of having the script to fail silently and not know about it. So that's why, I personally prefer to do it this way. And over here, we only got one row. We are only expecting one single row here. So that one single row will give us the blog content. So we say blog content equals to row bracket 0 because it is the row has only got one single entry, which is the content. And that's what we need. That's the only thing that we need. So at this point, we got everything that we need. So it's time to actually generate the HTML code. So only at this point, I will just do the entire HTML code in one single shot. So we'll do a print, open double quote, end double quote, and then we'll just do the HTML head, body. Yep. Go ahead. Oh, I thought you had a question.
Sorry.
The way I type, looks kind of funny because I open the tag and I immediately close it and then go back to insert stuff. But I learned over time that this is actually effective for me so that I don't have to worry about things that are missing an end. So it might look strange to some people, but to me it works really well. We only got one row. And within that row, the first TD is going to display the titles. So we're going to have title. Oh, I cannot remember the name again. It's title list. Okay. So we stick title list here, and then the second TD, which is the one to the right hand side, just has the content. So we have, cannot remember the names of the variables. Blog content, there we go. There we go. If you want to make it fancy, you can certainly make it fancier. Like, you can have a header, you can use bulleted lists, all kinds of stuff. I'm just doing the bare minimum here. Is that okay? Shall we give it a try? All right. Okay, we run it through using PHP first, just to make sure that there's no unexpected error in this case. So it all looks good so far. Okay, so it's all good. So far so good. Then we can use the browser to give it a try. And we are looking at main display.php. So it's looking okay so far, I think. So we click on some entries here. Ah, ouch. But it caught itself. Okay, so that's the best thing is it caught itself. So select count content ID from main content where content ID equals 2. Oh, okay, we can see the error here. It has the end quote, but it doesn't have the begin quote. Now, if it doesn't print this and it just fails silently, how would you know what's wrong with your script? Now, you can go through your code with a fine-tooth comb. Okay, when I said that, it just reminds me of Spaceballs, with the stormtroopers carrying a really gigantic comb over the desert. Okay, no. Okay, a few people know about it. But the majority go like, "What are you talking about?" Okay, so let's fix that problem because we know what problem it is. So we also know which script has the problem. It's the one that has the counting. Okay, so we just need to look for count blah blah blah. And sure enough, we are missing a quote here. There we go. All right. Give it another try. So, there we go. Well, Worf's blood journal says today is a good day to die. Sounds like something that Mr. Worf would say. So now it's working. The whole thing is. Now let's try to hack it, right? Because remember, we are doing a lot of stuff so that people cannot hack the website. So the first thing I will do is I'm going to give it something, an ID that doesn't exist. ID is equal to 20, okay? It doesn't exist. Press the enter key, and it just goes back to the default one. This is the block entry of data, which is in the future. Okay, so that's good. Now I really should display a message and say that that ID does not exist, da da da, and I probably should highlight the title of the one that is being displayed. Okay, but the homework assignment did not call for those things. I'm just doing the bare minimum in this case. Are we still doing okay so far with this code?
Yeah.
All right, cool. What about giving ID some really funky stuff like quotes and whatnot? I don't think I can put quotes here. We'll give it a try. To. Oh, it did fail because I expanded it inline. So it did fail because I did not protect one part of the script from that. This is the select content. It is grabbing the ID val directly. It did not fail in the previous one, but it failed here. Because I intentionally passed something that is really suspicious. Now, what if I specify ID equals 2, and then the space, which is a plus, or, let's see, I'm trying to, or content ID equals, okay, but I have to supply the actual equal sign. Okay, but that will fail as well, because the script, do you see how the script has changed to become, content ID equals 2 or content ID, I cannot find the ASCII code of equal to and a quote, but I can change it so that, the script to be executed by the SQL query to be executed by the PHP script is no longer what you thought it would be. I have just extended the whole thing. Okay? But how did it get past the other point? In other words, in our script, we are supposed to have validated all of this stuff here, but apparently it slipped through the check earlier and it was able to get through to the other part. So we have to find out why that is the case. Okay, so let's track it down. If set is going to be true, it will get the ID value from the get. Over here it is quoted. It is escaped. And this script succeeded. It counted at least 1, more than 0. And that's why, that's how it got past us. So this particular compare did not catch the problem. Now, I don't know exactly why it got past this point because it's not supposed to match a it's a string and one is an integer. They really should not match, but it did. It got past it. So the other way we can do this is to force the interpretation of the string into an integer first. Okay. Does anyone know how to do it in PHP? I'm hoping nobody knows.
Number.
Okay. Number.
Yeah, there's a number function.
Okay.
But actually it returns it as a string. Because you can format it as a string. So
It's int val.
It's not good because if you want to do a calculation, you use number, it turns it into a string, so it doesn't work.
I think we found it. Int val. So we're going to use int val, and we are basically forcing it into an integer value.
That's useful.
Yep. So we're going to say int val here, so that if you are passed a general string, it will force it into an integer. And we want to look it up before we actually use it. It's probably a good idea to double check and make sure that this does what it's supposed to. All right, so it says return the integer value of var, which is what you pass as a string or something else, using the specified base, which is usually base 10 for the conversion. Integer val should not use an object, as doing so will emit a ye notice level error and return 1. Okay, we look at the return value. If the integer value of var on success and 0 on failure, which means we cannot really tell whether it is actually 0 or whether it's the integer value of var, because the integer value of var can be 0 itself. Okay, that's not good. Empty arrays return 0, blah blah blah. The maximum value, minimum value, string mostly will return 0. Depends on the leftmost character of the string. Okay, so it doesn't really do any actual validation. Let's do something else then. Do you still remember preg underscore, what was the last one that we did? Match, okay. Let's do that.
With PHP, I never had a problem with that, though, with it not being a number. There wasn't really significant to it. It was pretty flexible.
Well, it might be flexible, but I wanted to be able to catch this one, because I wanted to be able to catch what if ID is XYZ.
Okay.
But integer value works already, because obviously this is now quote unquote working,
Yeah.
because it caught it as an integer.
So yeah, that's good practice. Yeah.
Yep.
Is there like a is int? Is there like an is int?
Maybe. Okay. PHP check integer format. Find whether the type, that's not what we are checking, is numeric. Find whether a variable is a number or a numeric string. That's not what we are looking either, I don't think. Is integer that's the type of the variable. It doesn't look at the string itself, because all the get variables, they are all strings. None of those is an actual integer variable.
Yeah.
So I would go back to preg match, because that's a regular expression and you can just check to make sure it is in fact an integer, that it only contains digits, for instance. So I would use this approach.
Search string is 0, brackets 0 to 9 brackets.
Well, let's find out. So the pattern is what you're looking, it specifies what is valid or what you're looking for. So what you should be looking for would be, okay, so let me put this into the program first. Okay, so we'll put it here. Okay, we'll say, and this returns true, false, right? Return value returns true if the pattern matches. Okay, so it's basically true, false. So we'll say if preg match, and then we specify the string here, the pattern that we're looking for. It has to start with a caret and ends with a dollar sign, because we don't want to look for an integer that is sandwiched between stuff. We want something that starts with a digit, ends with a digit, and it has only digits in between. Okay. And it is get ID val that we are checking on. So here we specify get ID val. If it matches, it's good. Otherwise, it is not good. So now in between, we just have to specify digits. And to do that, I cannot remember the syntax of this particular regular expression, so I'm gonna have to look it up here. Samples.
It doesn't accept like Perl type, like /d.
It's not exactly the same. I know it's not exactly the same, because there are several families of regular expression. VI has one set, grep has another set, and then PHP, I think, is yet another set. They are not 100% compatible.
Okay. Without POSIX 0 to 9. And start.
Yeah, you can do that. Yep. But I just want to, but you need to specify any number of, and I think that's still a star.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, that should work. Okay, so we'll just go old school and spell it out. Okay. So this have I ever talked about the regular expression? What the angle bracket, the square brackets do? What the star means? Yes. Okay.
Clean
So
star. It's a clean star.
it's a asterisk.
Yeah, they call it a clean star, 0 or more.
Oh, okay.
But don't we want a plus there because?
Yeah, we want at least one.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so we want a plus here. Okay, I think that's the syntax, but it may not be the same. I'm gonna check it anyway. Regular expression, and we look at. It might even have a anchors dot character classes. So within character classes, \d is digit. Okay. And then we want occurrences, once only, nope. Recursive, nope. Conditional, nope. Assertion, repetition, there we go. So a plus is what we need. Okay, so that should work. So I'm just gonna do the test here, and I'm just gonna print something, whether it's okay or not. So we'll say this is okay, and invalid ID. Now obviously this is gonna print somewhere it's not supposed to, but it's okay, we're just testing it. So refresh, not okay. What about one and then a quote, a semicolon, single quote here, whoops, quote, there we go. It still doesn't like it. Okay, invalid ID. Oh, it did know that it's not valid. It's just that we never really stopped it. That's the problem. Okay, so now that we know this code works, we're gonna say we have to put all of this code inside this if. Okay? Yep. Well, we have to know how many lines. This is line 50. And where is that code ending? Okay, so it's here. I'm just looking at the indentation. So the indentation ends here. So line 50 to 68. 50 to 68, move here. There we go. But then the indentation is all incorrect now. Oh, I think I did it wrong. Undo. Oh, I got another solution to this. To do this, we just do a 4dd, get rid of these 4 lines. And then we have to find out where to paste those 4 lines later. Ah. I think those are supposed to go all the way to the end. Perhaps here. Nope. Those are all else's that have nothing to do, so I'm okay to let it go for now. All right, do it one more time. No. I messed up my program. Unexpected end of file because I'm definitely missing some end curly braces. Ah, okay, I just messed up my program here. Okay, if you guys don't mind, I'm gonna cheat a little bit here. Okay. This makes it possible for me to match the curly braces a little bit better. And what I need to do is to find out where this one ends. And I need another close that's matching this one. And do we have anything on top of that? I don't think so. I think that should be it. I need to resize the whole thing back to there we go. All right, check it one more time. There we go. And if we pass this, it caught it. But I don't print the message anymore, but it did catch it. So the regular expression approach, definitely caught it. All right. So who would think that this, this one program, the third part of this homework assignment, can be involved like this? So any questions about this one? Hmm? How I caught it? Okay. Let me focus on just that few lines. And we want to change the problem with resizing is it's also changing the number of columns. And it's problematic there. There we go. Okay. So that's what you're looking for, right? Is the regular expression match that is validating that this has to start with a digit, can have any number of digits, but it also has to end with a digit. Cannot have anything else inside. So are there any questions? Yep.
Can that be replaced with if it's greater than 0? That means it's a number greater than 0.
On which one?
Instead of press match to validate if it's an integer, you just use if it's greater than 0. Then it would be true, if not it would be false, right?
It's only numbers, 0 to 9.
I don't know whether that will work or not. If your string is 1, 2, and then a semicolon, would it still be considered greater than 0?
Perhaps not. I'd have to check it, but
Because in that case, you'll be relying on some really obscure internal string to integer conversion thing, as opposed to preg is explicit and say, we need you to look like this to get past me. Okay, we can test that one. I mean, we can do a really simple test on. Oops, no. Okay, so we'll. But in general, I don't want to rely on something that is either undocumented or it's kind of obscure. So we can say if quote 1, 2 semicolon, which is invalid, right? Greater than 0. Print. Greater than.
any string should be false. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's a string, it can be greater than 0.
I don't know about that. Didn't work.
It did or it didn't?
It did not. It printed greater than, which means it considers the string quote 1, 2 semicolon end quote to be greater than 0, the number 0. So, but I do not want to, even if it works, I still would go back to the preg approach because that is explicitly stating what is considered valid, as opposed to, well, we'll use some internal string conversion thing to do it. All right. So are there any questions about this one? This entire homework assignment? Okay, let me go back and pull the entire homework assignment.
No time left for the next week. So
That
you're
is
gonna-
true,
You're going
but-
to extend the homework then, or?
Oh, it's already extended to Sundays.
No, like, but we won't have the luxury.
Discussion?
Discussion with you, yeah.
Well, we'll go ahead and start the discussion now, but it is important, I think it is important for me to go over the solution to this one, to the level, to the extent that I do, because this helps to build your skill for the next homework assignment. Because otherwise we'll be piling stuff on top of styrofoam, right? And it's all gonna collapse at some point. So I'd much rather spend the time to lay down the foundation so that people can have a solid foundation to work on. All right. So are there any questions about this homework assignment before we move on to the next one? No questions? All right. Okay, so the next one is block edit assignment. Okay, do you guys have any questions for me?
No.
No? Okay.
The add one, add some arrow check. The last one is script.
Okay, JavaScript. Okay, so this is block edit, which is supposed to be due on the 12th, which is today, right? Okay, but since we are just going to talk about it now, I have to extend the deadline. So we'll go over all this stuff first, and then we'll determine when we'll extend the deadline to. Okay. All right, so we'll take a look at this and find out what it's supposed to do. On the admin.php, write a script that allows me to edit an entry in the table. I should be able to edit the title, content, and author, but not content ID and not created. Okay, so make sure that those particular fields are not editable. The author should be in a drop-down menu with specific authors listed. Come up with your own list of 2 to 5 authors. Authors should be pre-selected. Okay.
So, the way she has written, she's saying you just come up with your own list, right? But if you were actually updating an existing table, your authors should be selected from that table.
Yes. And I would definitely make that change to the homework assignment so that you would only be listing authors in your database.
Which makes the assignment more difficult.
No, it does not, actually. Okay, so, yeah, go ahead.
So she wanted a drop-down menu with the specific authors. Now, let's say you wanted to respell a misspelled author. So the drop-down menu doesn't allow you to change a name. For example, you have Deanna Troy. It actually ends with an I. Troy. And if you wanted, if it had a
we want to change it and edit,
yeah,
then you won't be able to change it. That is correct.
yeah.
You cannot change the actual text anymore. You can only select from one of the existing authors.
Yes. Yes.
According
that's
to
exactly
this.
it, yeah.
Yep. I think there's a particular type of drop-down box that is kind of like a combination between a text box and a drop-down box. In other words, you can click the arrow down to select one of the items, but it is also acting like a text box to allow you to actually manually edit something in the box.
Okay. That's
And
great.
it kind of filters it. Like, let's say you had like a really long list of like 1,000 items and you wanted to filter stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. It's called a spinner in Android, but I'm not sure how it is called in HTML. That's just a spinner. That's really just a spinner.
You have so many values in a select menu.
The question was concerning. Okay, so when you want to edit something, you're sometimes you want to correct an error that you made earlier, right? So if the error was you used the wrong name or you spelled the name incorrectly, the approach that is in the homework assignment will not allow you to change the spelling of the author of an existing entry, because it only allows you to change the author to one of the known existing authors, but not to change the name of those authors. Do you see what I mean? So that's the issue.
Did it say you cannot edit the authors?
Yes. In the assignment, it didn't say that you should be able to edit the. You cannot change the spelling. You can only select from one of the existing authors in the system.
If one of the authors already entered incorrect?
Say it one more time.
Eventually, you're
When
gonna
we
get-
make our drop downs,
Mhm.
do you mean if we spell them incorrect or something, we cannot change?
If your entries are incorrect to begin with, you cannot fix the spelling because the drop down box doesn't let you change
Yeah.
and say, oh, this is supposed to be an I and not a Y.
We can fix it in drop down box, then we can edit. Oh, I don't think.
The drop down box only gives you choices. You can only select one of these many choices, right? But if you have a spelling mistake with an existing author, then you cannot fix that spelling. The drop down box doesn't let you do that, does it?
No.
So that's the problem. That's the issue.
Yeah, the author.
The admin should do it.
Define.
Hmm?
So the authors go as a select menu, and then eventually you'll make a student manager to you could be able to edit your author. You can edit your name and
It's
stuff.
the backend that design.
I suppose you can link the select to a edit field, to a text field. So whatever you select, but you can only do that using JavaScript. That would not be PHP anymore.
Yeah, I opened a new application to edit the profile separate from the content.
All right, but according to the homework assignment, this is what you're supposed to do, which is to use a drop-down box, which is a select, and then you can list all the options, in here.
Right.
Okay, but in this case, when you're working on this homework assignment, this would be the actual author's name, and I guess you can make the value the same too. I mean, it doesn't make sense that they are different in this case. All right, so that takes care of the drop-down box. It doesn't take care of the problem, the potential issue that you brought up. Okay.
I always use the ID for the values list.
ID for the value.
Yeah, the author ID for the value.
But there's no author ID. The authors do not have IDs.
Well, in general, whenever you can.
Okay, yeah, but not in this homework assignment. Authors do not have IDs. All right, so delete is another issue. On the admin page, write a script that allows me to delete entries to the main content table. That should be a are you sure JavaScript running on delete. Write a delete single entry script as well as a delete many script for this. Okay, so when the homework says delete single entry script, I'm interpreting that as the logic in admin.php. So it's not a separate page, it is the same page, but now you have the added ability to delete a single entry, or you can select multiple items using checkboxes and delete multiple items at the same time. All right, so how do we do that?
We can add 2 more columns.
You have to add columns, right? Okay.
One of them can be
Single
update,
delete.
like update.
Uh-huh.
The other one can be delete.
Yep.
For each records.
And what would be the anchors? How would you specify the anchors corresponding to those 2 columns?
We can use with each column one function. For example,
Yep.
when we press update, then it will just show us the editable.
But there's also one really big change to the structure of this entire thing. To use checkboxes, the whole table needs to be inside a form now. So now you have a form, inside the form you have a table, and in the table you have the checkboxes. So what is the value of the checkboxes? All the checkboxes will have the same name, okay? But they will have different values. What do you think would be the values corresponding to the checkboxes?
Content ID.
Content ID, yep.
What checkbox?
Hmm?
Where do you have
You cannot have a checkbox existing outside of a form.
Yeah, no. Where will we have checkbox inside the form?
Huh?
Where we can? Do we need to use checkbox?
If you don't use checkboxes, how do you do a multi-delete?
So either at the beginning, the first row, or
you
the
wanna do
first column, or the
multi-delete?
last column.
Yeah, that's what it's saying here.
This is-
Write a delete many script to allow me to delete entries to the main content table. So how do you figure out which entries to delete?
Yeah.
But
Then
why
we can-
single and many? Isn't it the same thing? Because now you're going to go through the entire table and you can check boxes and then keep deleting. So whether you select one or you select two.
I don't think you can specify a checkbox outside of a form.
No, I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
I'm saying she seems to be differentiating, or you need to write a script where you're deleting one row, and another script where you can delete more than one rows.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have a checkbox, you don't care whether you're selecting one checkbox or you're selecting two checkboxes. It should be the same logic.
But where do you put your checkboxes? You have to put the checkboxes
I
in the
understand that
table.
portion. I understand that portion. So
Right.
you have either first column or the last column
Mhm.
as your checkbox.
Yep.
And let's say you wanted to delete one row, so you just click your
Mhm.
checkbox in that row.
Mhm.
And but your logic says, okay, so I need to have an array of all my checkboxes that I checked, and then delete those rows, right?
Where do you put your array of checkboxes?
You save it.
Hmm?
You
Yeah.
go through your table and save it.
Inside the
Script.
table, right?
Yeah.
So you have to put the whole table inside the form.
Absolutely, I
Inside
understand all
a
that
form.
portion.
Okay,
My
gotcha.
only question is,
Okay.
if you look at the description, it is saying, oh, write a script that deletes one row.
Mm-hmm.
And then write a script that deletes more than one row. And I know the differences between is equal to and in,
Mm-hmm.
right, in your SQL.
But they're all on the same page. So
They're all on the same page, but what I'm saying is it's the same script.
it is the same script, but you're adding capabilities to the script.
So my point is,
Uh-huh.
if you have capability of deleting two rows,
Mm-hmm.
you have the capability of deleting one row.
True. But I think this implicitly speaking, this is saying that there has to be a control or something they can click, and upon clicking that link, it just deletes instantly. It does not wait for multi-select and then delete. You had a point to make earlier. Go ahead. No. No.
Oh, I forgot.
Oh, okay.
So you're
I'm
saying-
sorry.
For the single delete, we can do it within the last assignment. We can put one column update,
Mhm.
column delete. That will, whenever we first update, it will
Mhm.
just make one row editable.
Yep.
And also it deletes the one row. But also at the second table,
Mhm.
we can make one for only deleting multi ones with the checkbox.
So what you mean is you basically have two additional columns, right?
Yeah.
One column has hyperlinks that can delete that single row immediately,
Yeah.
and then the other column is a checkbox. So you basically click some of the checkboxes, and there will be one additional button that says delete selected items. And when you click the delete selected items, then your logic of your PHP code has to go through all the checkboxes and delete the matching entries.
Yeah, my total point is that in real life you don't do that.
You don't do.
Like, oh, I need to have two separate buttons, one to delete one row and one to delete more than one row.
Well, I mean, you
just
can
have
have that.
delete selected records, and then whether you select one or you select the entire screen, it is still the same function.
It provides the same functionality, but sometimes when 99% of the time you're only deleting one single entry, the checkbox approach is incurring one more click to the whole process. So it depends on the distribution. If most of the time you're deleting only a single entry, then it makes sense to have one anchor just to delete a particular row.
Yeah.
If the majority of the time you're gonna delete multiple items anyway, then you may not want to have that one single anchor to delete a single row.
Okay.
So it depends on the distribution of how that feature is used.
But at the same time, real estate on the screen is also very limited.
Hmm?
So your screen is very
Yep,
limited.
yep, but we are.
Now you're taking space on your screen,
Mhm.
now to creating these anchor tags, where you could have just done by one little checkbox.
Yep. That is true. Right, so let's go back to the homework assignment. So are we okay with this one, or do we have questions about it?
So I'm still not sure that if I delete more than one, then I didn't put the checkbox at every line of the table.
Every row of the table will have 2 additional items. They can be in the same cell, okay? They can be in the same cell or even share a cell with whatever is already here. So you can, before the title, you can have the 2 things, right? You can have an X as a hyperlink for deleting just that row, and then a checkbox to allow the selection and say, yes, this is one of the rows I want to delete when I press the delete selected item button.
So that's a form and a check and the table together.
Hmm?
The checkbox only can use in the form.
The checkbox can only exist in a form, yes. Okay, but so can a table.
It's
A
only
table can exist inside a form. Okay? Hmm?
completely okay.
Well, it all has to do with what can contain what, right? So it works in both ways. A table can contain a form, which I cannot understand why you want to do it in this assignment, but you can also have a table contained in a form, which is useful in this assignment. Yep.
Are there notes, did Carol make notes, or can you make like a sample?
I don't have one yet, okay, but I can make one. Because I got this code already working, so it is actually a fairly minor change to this to get the additional features to work.
Can I meet you in the morning again? My admin isn't.
Okay, so this is what I can offer you is if your admin is not working, you can use my admin. Okay? It may not be easier, okay? Here's the warning. Using my code is not necessarily easier than fixing yours and then use yours, okay? This is the usual disclaimer that I have for any class, okay? Because I can show you my code and you can evaluate and go like, I would much rather spend the time to fix mine instead of using yours. So this is my code, okay? It's not really long. I would suspect the code is actually shorter than some of yours, but it does use some additional features or some advanced features that can be a little bit difficult to understand. Okay, so I make it an offer. Okay, I can push this onto the server, and those of you who want to use this, go ahead, and those who do not want to use this, use something else. Okay. Because I think it's a good exercise, even for those of you who decide to use your own code because it's working already. It may still be a good exercise to read my code because you really should be able to understand my code because I'm not using any features that is not discussed at this point. Okay, so you might pick up a few tricks, and go like, oh, I didn't know we could do this. Okay, it's kind of a neat trick. Okay, is that okay? Yep. Huh?
Everything you use is in Carol's notes, or is it different?
Yep, everything in Carol's note, but I use those. Okay, so here's the thing about programming. It's kind of like Legos, right? Building Legos with Lego blocks.
Yeah.
Sometimes people have okay, this goes back to what is a thinking box, okay? What is your thinking box? It's an assumption that this block only goes with this block, okay? And the so-called thinking out of the box is really just saying, oh, there's no particular restriction. I see no reason why this block cannot connect with this block here. That is quote unquote thinking out of the box. It's not really thinking out of the box. It is just not putting extra unnecessary constraints when you understand the concept. Okay, but by reading the code of other people, then you start to understand, oh, I didn't know these 2 blocks can connect in this particular way. So your thinking box gets bigger. And everybody has a thinking box. There's no such thing as thinking out of the box. It's just that some people's box is bigger, and some people have boxes that are of really weird shapes. Yes.
When Carol did the video, I could catch it.
Okay.
It's just written down, I don't catch it, but by the videos I can.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. Okay, so let's move on to the more discussion of the assignment because I need to cover all of these first. Error checking. Your add and edit script should be able to add or edit the following entries. Cut and paste to the appropriate fields and test them. In other words, can you have single quotes inside the title of your blog? How many people have checked that? Did it work?
Add slashes help. I used a function in JavaScript to escape characters. It's called code URI component.
Okay.
You can pass that to your so it takes care of that. So yeah, it's good stuff. It took
Okay.
me a while to mess around with it, because I always had those problems with and symbols too. Sometimes they give you that problem. If you have an and symbol in your string and you have an SQL, it can mess up your SQL.
Uh-huh. So I'll paste this one into the content. The paragraph test. Oh, okay, I see. Test the quote issue. Okay, I'll pick up this one. I'll test it. Yeah, sure. There we go. Submit query. Aha! No, it didn't work entirely. This paragraph tests the apostrophe S. Well, is the original text just that apostrophe S? Testing. Yep, that's exactly what it is. And what about the rest? Test these double quote issues. Okay, mine works completely. All I did was to use MySQL I _ real _ escape _ string.
That's good.
That's the only thing I use. I use that to wrap around the things before I insert those items into the database. Okay. All right. So what else do we need to do?
Test the dangerous title.
Okay.
Prevents SQL injection.
I don't have a problem with this. Okay. Oh, I keep using a different application, and that's supposed to go to the title, right? Okay. And who's always in danger? I know exactly who. Danger mouse.
It takes a while to figure out why it's not working and you don't know. You have a character in your string and that's the reason your program's not working, because you have a character in your string and then you have to figure out how to escape your character to make the program work.
Okay. Oops. Because the script actually executed. The script part here is the part of the title, so this part did not get escaped correctly. It ran. That part of the JavaScript ran instead of being displayed. So what do we do with this one? I think you just mentioned the solution.
Add slash.
Yep. Or you can use the other escape. The escape string that I mentioned works exclusively with MySQL. It stops SQL injection issues, but it doesn't deal with JavaScript issues. So to deal with JavaScript, you have to use the other escape. So you have to look into PHP string escape. So quote strings with slashes, strings. Okay, we can look at this.
Encode
Yep.
URI component.
Yep. So that's the one you need.
And make sure you have spaces in your it preserves your spaces too.
So this will work with SQL injection as well, because it will also escape the single quotes, the double quotes, But in addition to that, it will also escape the angle brackets, which is what the other escape function did not catch.
So using these in tandem,
Hmm?
using
Add
these
slashes,
in
yeah,
tandem.
for the-
and-
I think you only need to use this one. I think this one
Okay.
covers what the other one does as well.
Okay, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah, I think for that, I use a combination. I use both the URI component and the add slashes, and that's the trick. You use them both together, and that's the way it would.
The URI one may not be needed because we are not formatting the URI part of the link.
That could be.
Yeah, but this one is definitely
The
needed.
add slashes is
Yeah.
effective.
The other one, the URL one, is needed when you need to pass it as a part of a get parameter. As when you're formatting the URL, then you need the URL escape function. But when you're adding entries into the database, this is the only one that you need.
I see.
Okay. So this is what you need for that portion. I'm just checking to see what else you need to do. Proper display. On your display page for a normal viewer, make certain that certain paragraphs render for the block entries. Proper paragraphs render for the block entries. That means you need to convert the new line characters at the end of paragraphs into actual paragraph text, the angle bracket with a P inside, before inserting content into the database. Okay, so what do you do with this one? This one is actually somewhat easy if you know the trick to do it. It has to do with regular expression. And what are we doing? Are we matching or are we replacing? We're replacing. Very good.
I have a function, it's called NL2VR, and it adds a VR whenever you have a space.
Mm-hmm. We're not doing spaces, we're doing new lines. So we're replacing new line characters with the paragraph tag.
Oh, I see.
Yep.
That's not a VR, that's a paragraph tag.
Yep, it's a paragraph
We can
tag.
format those, is there a reason? Is that any different than the VR? Well, the paragraph adds in the, if you wanted to add like a class to the paragraph and format it and display it. But as far as it being different than the VR.
But when you're entering to the database, you're keeping the new line characters. But the new line characters do not carry any meanings in terms of paragraphs. Okay? So this is the function call that can do this. So now the question is, what do you pass to the pattern, to replacement and subject in order to change the new line characters into, so that you have the proper paragraph text. So you guys can tell me more about this one because I'm not an HTML person. To use the paragraph tag, should you use the P and then the /P in tandem?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so your
they need to be
replacement.
enclosed.
So your replacement has to deal with both issues. So you will need two replaces. The first replace will handle the beginning of the line, insert the paragraph tag, the open tag. The second one will replace the new line character and replace that with the end paragraph tag. Is that okay?
Okay.
So the question is, how do we do this? All right, so I'm gonna help you guys experiment with this one and figure out how to get this done. Okay, so I'll just call this replace.php, and we'll have a string, test string, which is the input. So the input is going to be quite simple. The input is really just paragraph 1, new line, paragraph 2, new line, and then the last one is paragraph 3, and a final new line like this. So this should turn into 3 paragraphs. Open paragraph tag, paragraph 1, close the first tag, open the second one, paragraph 2, close the second one, open paragraph tag, paragraph 3, close that paragraph tag. Okay? So I'm going to try this one with replace. So preg replace pattern replacement subject. Okay.
And we're doing this in admin, correct? Are we doing this on the admin PHP file or?
Yeah, that's what it specifies, is in the admin. So we say preg replace, okay, and the first one is the pattern. Okay, so what are we looking for? I'm gonna try this. The beginning of a line, and what are we replacing with? The begin tag of a paragraph, and input is the input string. I'll put this into input 1, okay? So we can now say what is input 1, and that's it. I'm just testing this much. In other words, every time I learn something new, you know, as a PHP or a SQL or something feature, I design the minimalist experiment to try out something before I try to integrate it into a script, okay? Yep, because otherwise, you know, if your script doesn't work, you don't know why it is not working. So it's replacing the first P, but not the second or the third. That's because I forgot to specify what they call a modifier, okay? So when you click on modifier, it only has 3 or 4. I is not what we want because I means, you know, it's case insensitive. M is what we want, because M treats the subject line as consisting of a single line. Without the M, it is a single line. With an M, it is multi-line. So with an M, when this modifier is set, the start of line and end of line constructs match immediately following or immediately before any new line in the subject string, respectively, as well as to the very start and end of the entire thing. So that sounds like something that we want, right? So now we go back to this script, whoops, and we specify the modifier here. This is where you specify the M, which is the modifier. Okay, that's all I'm changing. And then I run. Oh, sorry, you're trying to take a picture. Go ahead. It should still be being recorded. Yep, it is. Okay. So we run PHP again. Woohoo! Now we have to deal with the end of line, right? Sort of. Okay, we'll use input 2 in this case. And this time I'm looking for the end of a line, which is a $sign, and each one should be replaced with a /p, which is the end paragraph tag. Okay. Cool. So now we can combine these two. We take input 1 to become the input to the second one. Nope, this is fine. This one is a 1. There we go. And we got an extra one at the very end because there's an empty new line character at the very end. So that means if I change that and not have this new line at the very end here, then we should be okay.
If you trim it,
huh?
if you trimmed it in the beginning, then you
If you trim it, would that work?
yeah. Well, no, a new line is different than a blank space.
It.
Not sure.
Well, to know for sure, we're gonna look it up. So you're gonna be okay?
Yeah,
See you tomorrow?
okay.
Okay.
You're gonna put that stuff on the class page?
Yeah, well, I'll post it to the whole class so everybody can use that code. Okay, trim white spaces or other characters from the beginning or end of a string. So these are the things that it trims, and guess what? It trims that too. So trim will work. All right, so we basically say we trim it first before we feed it and see if it works. Yep. Cool. Any questions? Can we do it with one single replace instead of 2?
Can can we, or do you want us to do it, or?
Well, it depends on how much you want to learn about regular expression. If you want to learn regular expression beyond this class and not just for grade purposes, then I can show you how to do it. If you say, I just want to learn enough to score points in this homework assignment, then you don't need it. What do you think?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So I'm glad that you guys, as the I'm not gonna say the name of that character, but as a certain character in Indiana Jones said, you chose wisely. Because it's politically incorrect to refer to that particular type of people. Okay, so what we need now is to refer back to one of the pages that we were looking at. I'm just looking for that thing. Repetition. Yep, this is the one. All right. So what we're looking for is back references. In other words, when you match something, you can say, hey, this chunk of stuff, I want it to be in the replacement here. Okay? And this is our ticket. Okay. There's a lot of text here. Backslash. Okay, so you can use a backslash and then a number. Anything greater than a 0. Okay. So now we have to find out how to recognize a sub-pattern. Sub-patterns are delimited by parentheses, round brackets, which can be nested. Making part of a pattern as a sub-pattern does two things. It localizes, it also set it up as capturing so that we can refer to that later on. Okay, so we'll give it a try. Okay, so, but in order to give this a try, I'm using another example. Okay, so we are going to use backreference.php, because I don't want to use exactly the same script for everything, because otherwise, if something doesn't work, I cannot differentiate what is not working. So we'll say print preg replace, okay? And okay, the first one is what? I cannot, my short-term memory is very, very short-term. I have to look it up, sorry. Okay, so we specify the pattern first. So we'll specify the pattern of this, a bunch of digits, close this, plus, open paren, 0 to 9, star, close paren. We look for this, and then we have to specify the replacement. So this is where things can be interesting. We do a \2 to specify the second group of the match, and we can change the operator to a minus, and then \1 to be the first number. Okay, and then the string or the subject that we have is, let's say, 1, 2, 3 plus 7, 8, 9. Okay, so if this works the way I think it should work, which is not always the case, it should come back as 7, 8, 9 minus 1, 2, 3. Okay, essentially, this part here is matching 1, 2, 3, but it's not just matching it, it is also saying, remember, this is back reference 1. This one here is now specifying back reference 2. So the replacement string is saying, whatever is back reference 2, which is this portion, should now be here. I changed the operator from a plus to a minus, and then I use back reference 1 to refer to the first number. Okay? So are there any questions about this stuff here?
We changed the order.
We're changing the order of the number as well as the operator. The operator itself is not captured. It has no parentheses around it. Okay, so we'll give it a try. Ew! Ew! It did something that's really, really wrong. Okay. Oh, that's because a preg replace may not be returning a string. So let's see, what is it returning? Return value, it returns an array if the subject parameter is an array, but this is not. Otherwise, a string. So it is returning a string. Oh, you know what? I think what it is. I think I know what it is. The back reference is not working. So \1 is a special character. So I need to read a little bit more about how to use back references. I think I messed up. And where is that subpattern? Okay, back references. Okay. Outside a character class, which means outside of the square brackets, a backslash followed by a digit greater than 0 is a back reference to a capturing subpattern earlier to its left of the pattern. Oh, okay. However, if the decimal number back reference matches, can we use it in the replacement? Nope, doesn't say anything. When working with a replacement pattern where a back reference is immediately followed by another number, you cannot use the familiar backs. Oh, okay, that's why. Okay, I know why. I know why it's not working. Because this \2 is interpreted as ASCII code 2. It has to be backslash and then a backslash, because the two backslashes is really representing a single backslash, which is what I need to refer to a back reference. Okay. I think that is why. Okay. It's different. Still not working. Solution is to use $. Okay. So $ in square in the. Okay, let's try that. Nope. Okay, replacement may contain references in the form. Okay, it's just $, no, without the curly braces. There we go. Okay. Not quite. Okay, it's getting close. 312978. It picked up something, but not what we want. I think it's because it's not greedy. Oh, this is not okay. It has to escape this +2 because the plus means at least one of the preceding. That's what it's interpreting that plus instead of meaning a literal actual plus. There we go. We got it. Okay, question. How does this have anything to do with your homework assignment? Remember, the challenge was to use a single p-reg replace to get both the begin and the end tag. So how does this have anything to do with that?
Now we can use both of them in single.
But why would this be helpful?
Like if it has the
Okay, so let's check that one. Okay, so we're almost done.
has the stones.
Okay, what is the other program again? I cannot remember the names of the program that I just did. Replace, that's it. All right, so we want to merge these two, replace into a single one. So I'm going to comment out these so that I can still at least tell what I was attempting to do. P-reg replace. Okay, so we'll specify some string here, and the input is input itself, not input 1, because we only got 1. So what is the pattern that we're looking for? Okay, we're still looking for the beginning of a line, right? And whatever in between and end of the line. But we also want to specify those in parentheses. In other words, what we're doing here is we are saying we are locating patterns that look like this. The beginning of a line, whatever thing that it contains before the end of the line. But I also want to remember whatever is in between the beginning of the line and the end of the line as something I can refer back to. So now the replacement, which is this part here, would say, oh, begin it with an open paragraph tag, back reference whatever is in parentheses in the pattern, and end it with a end paragraph tag. Is that okay? So the ability to refer back to a chunk of things that we saw earlier makes it possible to use it again in the replacement pattern. Is that okay? So we'll go ahead and check it out. PHP replace. Dun-dun. Well, this is where I do this to myself. Yeah. But this is useful, okay? I know it sounds like, oh, we are just, splitting hair. We got the original code working already. Why do we have to learn all this new stuff that looks kind of really abstract and not really applicable? It's because a lot of times it is actually applicable. Because when you need to swap the ordering of something, or you have to refer to a sub-pattern that you already match, and you say, I need that piece back in the replacement string, this is how you do it. And it really shows you just the tip of the iceberg of the power of regular expression. I mean, we are really just using maybe 2% of what regular expressions can do. And you can see that it is already giving you something like, wow, that's looks really simple, but it's not simple in terms of concept.
Yeah.
So to those of you who think, okay, I'm not, interested in this, I'm sorry I took up your time, but, at least for the rest of the class, we get some exposure of what regular expressions can really do. All right, any questions? I think we got it. I think we hit all the topics for the new homework assignment. All right. So it's really just a matter of sitting down and just kind of cranking out the code. Yeah.
So did we resolve that first one about the blog edit? With the drop down.
Oh, we have not resolved that one. At least I haven't tried it. So so the key to solve that one is add slashes. So we have to call add slashes, and I think that is in my admin.php. So we locate escape. Okay, these are fine. Okay, the insert field is the one that needs to change. So we will change this whole thing to, what was that again? Add slashes. There we go. All right, give it a try. Where did I put it? There we go. Okay.
I'm dropping my damn mouse.
So we'll say oops again. Okay. So let's hope it doesn't show. It shows oops, but that's okay because that's from the old one.
Yeah.
And oops again. Ah!
Prevent oops.
Oops of oops.
So oops again, did not work. Okay, so you cannot see it here because it is integrated as a part of the JavaScript, but when you say view page source, you will find it. So unfortunately, I put everything onto the same line, but we can look for oops again. There we go. It becomes a part of the JavaScript, and that's why you don't see it, because it is not displayed as text. And that's the issue.
How we should prevent that
Breaking.
all this.
Let me look up add slashes again. This one actually does not handle the angle brackets. It doesn't say that.
Is there like HTML characters? HTML characters?
As a call, as a functioning?
Yeah, I think it's going to translate the slash, the angle brackets to less than or greater than equal.
Okay. It doesn't show up here.
Or,
There's another function, HTML entities.
and that's what I think it is.
Okay.
Yeah, that changes everything into its ASCII code, so it doesn't look like HTML.
I think that's our ticket. HTML entities. Okay, so let's try that here. There we go. All right, give it one more try. Oops, yet again.
Yet again.
Yet again, yes. Submit query, oops, okay, we expected this one, oops, again, we expect that one.
Oh.
Aha!
Ooh.
That was our ticket. Good job.
So, danger mouse? Oh, oops, yet again, okay. Yeah. Okay, but this is still tackling the third part. The first part, the blog edit, where with the drop-down menu. I wasn't sure if we had cleared that up.
Oh, I think that one we can just follow the instruction, just use a drop-down box. So you can only select one of the authors that are in the database already.
So you can't correct them.
You cannot correct. Yep. Right,
Okay.
you cannot correct.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so with that particular problem, we have to somehow be able to find all the unique authors of the entire database. So we have to find out. Okay, so we will say select author from main content, and that's not going to do the trick because we got three danger mouse here, or three danger mice, three danger mouse entries over here. And that's not what you want because you don't want danger mouse to appear 3 times in your drop-down box. So what we need to do, okay, I forgot the syntax, but I know we can do it. So you look at MySQL, select, and on this particular page, there should be a keyword called unique.
Yeah, unique key.
Okay.
So are you
No.
doing are you doing unique constraint, or are we?
No, we just want to limit that each entry is only displayed once. I think you can use group by as well. Because unique is not part of here.
Or duplicate.
Hmm?
But I think this approach introduces another problem.
Mhm.
let's say you pick one of the danger mouses. How do you know which one you're editing, which field for? So let's say you're able to come back with a unique danger mouse. Okay, and let's say you wanted to edit its content.
But you're only using it as the new author or the changed author of a
Yes,
particular
yeah.
existing blog or new blog.
But there's 3 of them, so you might change all the content for all
But
3.
but they don't have an ID. Authors don't have IDs.
No, I didn't say that. I was saying that, you know, the danger mouse, there's going to be 3 instances, and we're going to pull a unique one from the.
We'll combine all of those into one.
Right.
Right.
So when you try to edit another field of the same, of that author, danger mouse, which record will actually be edited?
But we are not selecting which one to edit by author. It is only when you're editing, when you specify the author, you pick one of the authors from the drop-down box.
Right. So there's 3 danger mouses. You're picking one of them, which happens to be whatever that returns.
But they are all the same, so it doesn't really matter which one you pick.
Well,
They come from different rows in the table, but that should not matter.
Okay.
Right? Okay, so well, let me fix this one first. Group by author. So now you can see, it's only listing, unique entries.
Yes, and let's say you select author / title. Okay, and it's going to list number 1 and one of the oopses, and I don't know which oops.
Okay. All right. So if you select more than just author, I think they all show up. Okay. So if you say author and content ID, which is guaranteed to be unique, it will show up. Oh, it only shows up 1. Okay.
So that's what I'm not sure how to tackle is that's the 8th record, which is probably the last one.
It's the first one. It's the first of the danger mouse.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really matter. But they only pick one of them.
Okay. So let's say you wanted to edit the title field for the second danger mouse.
But when you edit, it is okay. I think I know what the question is. Okay. So when you select which one to edit right here. When you select which one to edit, you're not using the author to select. You have a button on the row that says edit, or it has a little pencil icon. When you click that, it edits that particular row. In other words, you locate which row to edit using content ID, not the author. When you edit, you can change the author, but you can only change it to according to this part. You can only change the author to one of the existing authors.
Okay. So in this table within this form, you have a drop-down menu under each and every author.
When you
in the table.
When you click the edit icon or the hyperlink of a particular row, that will populate the form with the existing title, the existing author, and the existing content.
Right.
But the author is not going to be a general text field anymore. It's going to be a select input field,
right,
or a drop-down box.
Okay.
So you can only change the existing author to one of the known existing authors in the entire table. You cannot just arbitrarily change the name of the author anymore.
Okay.
So the problem that you mentioned earlier is still there. You cannot change the Y to an I in Troy. Okay, so that would still be an issue. I would like to think of a way to fix that problem. But on the other hand, it would not cause problems. using the group by is not going to cause a problem, because all you're really trying to do is to say, okay, give me all the authors in this entire table, but don't give me duplicate items.
Okay. Okay.
Okay? All right. And is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, you understood what I just said? Okay, good. Good?
Oh, yeah, I have a question about something else though.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, about what I'm working on.
Oh, okay. So is the rest of the class okay with the homework assignment? Do we have enough pieces to get started with this one? Okay, excellent. All right. So I'm going to stop the streaming, and if you have any individual code that you want me to look at, just kind of write your workstation name down here. You don't have to.